Wagwan lads, Excel lads is back after a 2-year hiatus, and today I will be showing you guys how to make a pivot table in order to analyze, simplify, and ultimately make sense of large amounts of raw data. In this video, firstly I'll be cleaning up my raw data using flash fill and the if, countif functions. Then I'll be creating a pivot table to analyze and summarize this data, and during this I'll show you guys how to use filters, slices, and the report filter. I'll also be messing around with some conditional formatting. In this video, I'll be analyzing rugby league stats. However, pivot tables are more commonly used for financial purposes, for example, tracking inventory. I recommend watching the whole video and following on with an Excel workbook of your own, as it is a step-by-step tutorial. However, if you want to skip to certain parts of the video, I understand, and I've included the timestamps in the description below. Let's rip in. Firstly, I want to clean up the data I have here on my sheet. All this data has been imported from Fox Sports Lab and individual NRL play statistics. As you can see, they're pretty expansive, and I'll put that link in the description below if you wanted to play around with it. So, with setting our data for pivot tables, it is critically important that the raw data, which is on this sheet, is properly sorted out so it is able to be filtered correctly to your specifications when you use pivot tables, which we will be doing later in the video. If you are already happy with the setting of your raw data, you can skip this section of the video to the next. However, I do recommend watching this section or portion of the video for some useful formulas and Excel tips and tricks, you can say. Firstly, I'm going to reformat the current column name, which is column A, into separate name and team columns using flash fill. So I'm going to insert 2 columns here because I want to split it up into 2 columns. Now, the player name here is A. Johnston, and his team, which is in brackets, is South Sydney Rabbitohs, which is SOU in its abbreviated form. I want to split that up into 2 different columns, in which the first one is called name and the second one is the team of the player. So I will just type it out. A. Johnston and SOU for South Sydney Rabbitohs. Now, if you go to the data tab in the ribbon, you'll see that right next to the text to columns button is this flash fill icon. Now, if you press that, you can see here column A has been completely filled out with the name of the column C, the player in column C. Now, if we do the same thing with the team, fills that out too. Let's take an example. To get quickly to the bottom of your spreadsheet, if you're on Mac, just hold down Command and the down arrow key. Straight there. Wolford for Canberra. Goes exactly like that. Alright, so we can delete this column now. Okay, so I'm just going to reformat the top so it's consistent. There we go. Okay, secondly, I'm going to remove any player names that are duplicates. So, as an example, if we search up J. Paulo, I know there's 2 J. Paulos in the league. There's Jackson Paulo of the South Sydney Rabbitohs and Junior Paulo of the Parramatta Eels. So if we search it up, that's Jackson Paulo of the South Sydney Rabbitohs in cell A97. And the second example is J. Paulo, Junior Paulo of the Parramatta Eels in cell A304. So to fix this, because if you get duplicates in our pivot tables, it spells bad news, I'm going to insert a column here. And I'm going to use a function that can detect if a cell has a duplicate within a range. That's going to be if counts if the range, so That's from cell A2, and remember to use absolute references, which means the $signs, because the range doesn't actually change, it's static. All the way down to the bottom, which is cell A477, add in the absolute references there again. Now, the criteria is the original cell, and so as we autofill, because we're not using absolute references, the criteria will update every single time. So it'll be sort of like a loop. Okay, so we're going to test if there is greater than 1 occurrences of the criteria. So in this case, Alex Johnston. Now, if it's true, we're going to write the text or string duplicate. And if it's false, we're just going to leave nothing, which we can do by putting in a string of nothing. Enter that in. Okay, so there's no duplicates of A Johnston within the whole range, so we're fine there. As we autofill, though, we see, okay, T May of PEN, Penrith, is a duplicate. We can just fix this by just writing pen next to it, and then there's no duplicates for the rest. We'll go down here, J Paulo, he belongs to the South Sydney Rabbitohs. We'll just update like that, and this will just take us 20 seconds. B Smith at the Storm, Melbourne, and I believe there's only one more occurrence, which is here. And they're both gone now because there's no duplicates. Okay. Thirdly, I'm going to find and replace hyphens within this sheet with zeros. This is only obvious within the goal kicking percentage column here, and when you're using pivot tables, it may come up with a reference error or some other number reference error when you put in hyphens into the calculation. So instead of a hyphen, which signifies nothing, we'll just put 0 there instead. And to get the find and replace tool, just hold down Control H, it'll come up automatically. Find what? The hyphen, and replace with 0. However, this is important. As you can see in cell A7 here, J Addo Car has a hyphen in between Addo and Car. So if we don't select find entire cells only, then it'll also replace that cell with 0, which we don't want. So we'll replace all. Or finish, we made 424 replacements. Okay, done. That's how you use the find replace formula. Okay, lastly, in cleaning this data set, I'm going to replace certain decimal values within the sheet with percentages to make the raw stats easier to read and analyze when they come up within our pivot tables. So this stat here, T per minute, which is tries per minute. By selecting the entire column, I can select the percentage symbol and it'll come up as a percentage. But that doesn't really do much for us now, 211%. So it's better if you expand the decimal places by 2, and so you can accurately distinguish between someone who scores at a higher rate, for example, Alex Johnston at 1.51%, with someone who doesn't at, for example, J Fafita at 0.47%. And we'll just do these for other metrics such as runs per minute. Percentage symbol there. Line breaks per run. Tackle bust per run. Offloads per run. Meters per tackle. Oh, missed tackles per tackle, sorry. Error per minute. This should be M here. That's why it's important to just go over your data just to make sure it's all correct. select the column. And finally, penalties conceded per minute. Alright, so that's our raw data completely done. We'll just remove this column now, there's no need for it. Yep, that's our raw data completely done. So now we can move on to making a pivot table and interpreting and analyzing this data for usefulness. And now for our first problem, we will be creating a pivot table. And using this pivot table, we're going to find the top 10 try scorers in the entire league, which means out of all the cells in this range, we are going to be finding the top 10 players who have scored the most tries. So we can do this by going to the Insert tab and pressing Pivot Table. Now, when creating a pivot table, Excel automatically includes every value, every cell rather, that has a value inputted in it on the sheet. But if you want to exclude any columns or rows, you can just manually update this range to fit what data you want in it. So we'll just press OK because I want to include every stat in here. Turn the brightness up a bit. Okay, so we've got a pivot table up. Now, we're looking to find the top 10 try scorers in the entire league. So for our rows, we want players because we want to see what players have scored what amount of tries. So we'll just drag name into rows and we get a list of every player in the competition. Now, for values, we want to have the amount of tries scored correspond with the player which is in the row column. So we'll go to T, which is tries scored, and we can just select this checkbox and it'll automatically go in as a value. So now every player has the sum of their tries scored in the season listed right next to their name. And so this is a pivot table. Now though, we want to find the top 10 try scorers in the entire data set. So instead of manually looking through all these and going, what are the top 10? Oh, he scored a few tries. We're going to do this automatically using the pivot table option. So select this drop down box and next to by value, select this box. We're going to go top 10. And you don't have to find the top 10, you can find the top 5, top 7, or even top 100, but for our purposes, we are finding the top 10, so just type in 10. And up comes the top 10 try scorers. However, you will notice they're not sorted by the amount of tries yet, because you have 30, 15, 20, they're sorted alphabetically in this column. So there's two ways really you can sort for tries. The easiest in my opinion is just right clicking and going down to sort largest to smallest, and it'll automatically arrange the data set to the top 10 try scorers. So that's how you do it. That's how you find the top 10 try scorers in the entire league using a pivot table. Sorts through hundreds of thousands of cells in a matter of seconds. Now on to our second problem. We're going to try and find the top 5 try scorers by team. Firstly though, I'll just rename my sheets. We'll name this player stats. You just want to be tidy when you're dealing with Excel, so you don't lose track of anything in pivot table. Okay, so we want to try and find the top 5 try scorers by team. In our last problem, we found successfully the top 10 try scorers in the entire competition. But how are we going to find the top 5 by team? Well, we can do this using a filter. So we have the team field right here, and we can drag this in to the filter box. Now, as you see in cell A1 to B1, we have a filter. So currently, we're factoring in all teams in our calculations, so the entire league. And that's why we found the top 10 try scorers in the entire league. But we can actually filter the data set by team. So currently it's selected all, and we'll go to my favorite team, Parramatta Eels. Just select that box, and up comes the top try scorers in the Parramatta Eels. And since we wanted the top 5, we can filter this out. Just replace that with 5. Enter. Got Gutherson, Sevo, Blake, Brown, Penasini, and Papali'i. And you can do other teams as well, obviously. You can do Penrith. You have May, Crichton, To'o, Tungo, Kikau, and Edwards. Although, I think that's 6. Oh, okay. The reason there's 6 here is because there's a tie here. If we went to another club, say the Bulldogs, and you notice if I select 2 clubs, say PEN, Penrith, and CBY Bulldogs, it combines the 2. So Adokar is a player for the Bulldogs, and he ties with May of Penrith with 16, and then To'o, Tungo, and Crichton finish off the list. So that's how you use a filter to find the top 5 try scorers by. Okay, our next problem is finding the most accurate goal kicker in the competition. So since we're doing the competition, because there's no real relevancy doing the most accurate kicker by club, because each club only or normally has one designated goal kicker. So we're going to remove the filter, and when you remove an item from one of these boxes here in the pivot table fields, it gives a little whoosh sound. I don't know whether you can hear it in my video, but just grab it and then whoosh it away. So we've gotten rid of the filter, and so it's gone back to the top 5 try scorers in the whole competition. But we want to replace the values field, so we'll get rid of that. And we want to replace it with goal kicking percentage. So drag that down here. And let's find the top 10. So we'll just do top 10 again. And we'll sort. Okay, great. So we've got the top 10 goal kickers in the competition. But there's a problem. You'll see here that O'Sullivan, Harris Tavita, Harawira-Naira, and Chad Townsend are on 100%. And while statistically they are the best kickers in the competition, they could not have done that over an entire season. So there's a problem with our data. So instead, I'm going to try and filter this field with those with at least 40 attempts. 40 goals, because it's very easy to have 100% kicking goal kicking percentage when you've kicked 3, 4, 5 attempts. You know, they could all be right in front of the posts. But when you have only over 40 made goals, it suddenly becomes very difficult, and that is a more accurate representation of a kicker's accuracy. So to do this, we are going to use a slicer, because filters don't do this very well. So go to PivotTable Analyze and insert slicer. Now the field we're going to be using for our slicer is goals kicked, which is this GLS data field. So we're going to press OK. And up comes this little box thingy, which will extend out. And we want to filter out those people with less than 40 made goals. We want to filter them out, and we'll include everybody else. So we'll select this multi-select button here, and just hold and drag this button from 0 to up until 32, because 41 is the next best goals kicked. And that gets rid of everybody who has not made 40 goals. And so we are left with 10 kickers who are very recognisable. All the main kickers for their club: Cleary of Penrith, Reynolds, Holmes, Fogarty, Walsh, Moses, Mitchell, Lomax, Pappenhausen and Walker. So that's how you find the most accurate goal kicker in a competition, because you can see that when you include names with very low attempts on goal, or in this case very low goals scored, less than 40, it skews the data so that it's not accurate. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing just to reinforce this concept, but we're going to find the longest average kicker. So we're going to use a slicer to filter out those names with less than 100 kicks this time. So we'll just get rid of this slicer because it's no longer relevant, and we'll also get rid of the goal kicking data field because it's no longer relevant. We'll replace this value with the kick meters per kick data field, which we have here. Again, drag and drop. Every player gets a corresponding value, and we'll do the top 10 in the comp again. Go down to top 10. All right. Now, as I said earlier, we want to filter out those with less than 100 kicks. And to make this perhaps more visual as to how this helps us exclude values that might skew the data set, we can add in another set of values. So I'll add in kicks, which is what our slicer will be anyway. Drag and drop. Okay, so the majority of the people in this pivot table have only made 1 or 2 kicks. Only Drew Hutchinson and McCulloch have made over 10 at least, and they're not even primary kickers for their team. So we're going to use a slicer again. So PivotTable Analyze, insert slicer, which is right here, and we're going to be slicing by kicks. Go up here, extend, and we'll exclude everybody that has not made 100 kicks. So multi-select, hold and drag, scroll down, hold and drag. There we go. And we'll filter by largest to smallest, or sort rather. And just to make things more readable, just reduce the decimal places. Great. So on average, Jake Clifford is the longest kicker in the league with 34.71 meters, and Luke Brooks is also in the top 10, rounding it out with 29.13 meters. I do have to explain a limitation with this solution though. This includes every kick, even grubbers. So this doesn't actually measure who the per se longest kicker is. If we wanted to do that, we'd have to gather kicks that were all intended for distance, so usually those taken inside one's own half, and exclude grubbers and bombs and all those, and then maybe someone like Mitchell Moses and Matt Burton would they would definitely rank more higher. Right, we're going to practice this skill again, and this time we're going to find the players most likely to offload. Now, to do this, we'll find the players with the highest percentage of offloads per run. So we'll go straight to the fields offloads per run, which is here. We'll get rid of kicks and kicking meters per kick, and we'll insert our required field. Get rid of the slicer, but once we do that, it's still evident that the slicer still applies here. this is obviously not every single player in the competition. It's a selected range. So to fix this, go into PivotTable Analyze and just click on Filter Connections, which is right in the same sort of block as Insert Slicer. So we're going to go Filter Connections. And you see the filter we used for the previous exercise still applies to this pivot table. So just unselect this and the range should change. Okay, and it does. Great, so we can get on with it now. We'll go by top 10 yet again. And mind you can do anything. So you can do greater than, less than or equal to. Just play around with this in your own time. Top 10 for the league. I'm not going to sort by teams in this. Right. We'll sort largest to smallest. And for this range, we'll just use percentages. Correct to 2 decimal places. Yet again, we need to clean this up, and I'm going to put 2 restrictions on this. I'm going to add in, firstly, offloads. We don't want this as a percentage. In order to qualify for this pivot table or data set, I want a player to have at least 20 offloads. So I'm going to input a slicer, go down to offloads, and I want to exclude everybody with less than 20. So go multi-select, should update. Easy. Okay. Now I want to put another restriction in. So far we've only put one restriction using a slicer, but this time I want to do 2. Actually, it'd be easier if I just went percentage. Would that work? No. We'll just update that at the end. I put in errors this time because you don't want someone offloading who makes heaps and heaps of errors. And more, instead of just errors, because a player may come off the bench and so their errors will be skewed. We want errors per minute. Put that as value. And I want my errors per minute to be below 1%. So I'll add in another slicer. Insert slicer. Rounds to a nice 2 decimal places for us. There we go. And we'll just get rid of every single value up to 1%. That's good. It doesn't change the table, so we can proceed to sort from largest to smallest. Put that in percentage. We'll put this in percentage. And there you go. So you can see from here, while a player like Kickow has more offloads, Ben Hunt offloads at a greater rate per run, and however this results in his errors per minute being significantly higher than Kickow's. And just you can practice this with any statistic. Now for this exercise, we're going to do something a bit different. Previously throughout this whole video, I've been using the name data field as the row, but now we're going to get rid of it and instead filter by tries for each team. Just get rid of this. Get rid of the slices. Get rid of the team. And now we have a blank pivot table. Alright, so for the rows, we're going to put in team. So up comes every team in alphabetical order. And so what I want to find is the total tries each team has scored in the season. So I'll put that in there. Tries as values. It'll come up. We'll sort from largest to smallest. And then you have it. There you have it. Melbourne at 129, the West Tigers at 54. So what this pivot table does is goes back to our previous workbook, and it looks through this whole thing, and it aligns every team value with the amount of tries that player has scored, and adds it up. So Alex Johnson would contribute 30 tries, and he plays for Souths. Therefore, Souths would have 30. We'll go down to the next Souths value. Cody Walker. He has 14 tries, so the cumulative total would be 44, adding up 14 and 30, and you just go on and on. And rather than having to do it manually, this pivot table does it instantly. So now we're going to make a graph out of it. We haven't made a graph yet. To do this, go to PivotTable, Analyze, and just put in PivotTable chart. We can name this tries by team. Make it a bit bigger, and it gives us a nice column graph of every team's tries. However, there are some limitations to this, not for everybody else's use, but if you're specifically using this for rugby league purposes, you've got to be aware that players change teams mid-year. For example, Matt Lodge moved from the Warriors to the Roosters mid-year, so his total end-of-season tries, if he did end up scoring any, would count entirely for the team he is listed as of this round, which is, of course, the Roosters. So any tries he scored for the Warriors would actually be counted as a try for the Roosters. Therefore, in real life, this table specifically is not accurate, but the pivot table itself is extremely accurate, and you can do all types of graphs with this. If you want to change the chart, you can just right click, change chart type, and the column graph would be the best option for this data type, but you can also do a pie chart, which is not as good as there's too many teams. That's what it'd look like. Okay, so I've gone back to the first thing we did in this video, and that's finding the top 10 Tryscorers in the entire competition. But for this last section of the video, I'm going to show you how to use the report filter. Now, the report filter compiles individual reports for the filter we've listed, so we've listed team, in terms of the values we put down. So by using the report filter, I'm going to get 16 individual reports on every team on their top 10 try scorers, as we've done for the entire competition here. To do this, click on any cell within the pivot table, go to pivot table, analyze, and right here in options next to the pivot table name and the active field section, just click the drop down bar, and we're going to select the middle show report filter pages. Show all pages of team, which is our filter. Select OK. And now what this has done is compile 16 individual workbooks that give us a summary of the top 10 try scorers of each team. So Brisbane, Oates leads with 20 tries, all the way down to Billy Walters with 3. You've got Canberra, Canterbury, Cronulla, Gold Coast, Manly, Melbourne, so on. And we're just going to click the Tigers there. So we've got 16 sheets. They're called sheets, by the way, not workbooks, my mistake. And they're all sorted from largest to smallest, as we've done in the original pivot table. So now, just for fun, I'll show you some conditional formatting to potentially make this look nicer. So conditional formatting is really formatting the data in a way that is more appealing and makes it easier for somebody to understand. And if you go to the Home tab, click Conditional Formatting, we'll just highlight all these cells first. Conditional Formatting, and we'll do color scales. So this color scale will do green for the highest Tryscorers and red for the lowest in this list. So select that, and we can see, well, top Tryscorer here has done really well, and he's got a green to represent that. And then down here with Jaden Sewer, he hasn't done so well, so he gets red 5. And we can do this for Parramatta 2. We'll just do it again. Highlight the cells, conditional formatting, color scales. Boom. Clint Gutherson with the 15, all the way down to Ryan Madison with the 4, the red. Now, if we go to Penrith, we can also do something else called data bars. And they'll just fill the cell with the corresponding amount of tries. So we'll just select the blue data bar here, and Taylor May, with his 16 tries, he's got the most, so his data bar is bigger. All the way down Api Coruscant, who's got a less significant proportion of the grand total of 98. If we do that with another team, Melbourne, we can also change the color. Data bars. And since Melbourne is purple, we can select this sort of purplish color. Oh, it's more like pink. But anyway, that's what it does. One last one you can do is icon sets. And you can just do indicators. This doesn't really mean anything by itself though. If we want it to mean something, we can go to Manage Rules, and we've got our icon set here, but I want to edit this rule. So we will display a tick when someone scored more than 10 tries, because 10 tries is a significant amount. This is using percentiles, but this is more of an individual accolade tries, so we'll change this to a number, and we'll just say greater than or equal to 10. And then for the yellow bar here, we'll just do 5. And then so what this is going to do, it's going to give the red cross to those who scored less than 5 tries. It's going to give the yellow exclamation mark to those who've scored between 5 and 9 tries, and the tick to those who've scored over 10. So we'll just apply this rule. Okay. And it fixes it up here. Well, it didn't do that. Why did it do that? Oh, see, we left a percent, so it's important to check your work. Number 5. Alright, yep, now it fixes it for us. Sorry about that mistake. So you can see conditional formatting sometimes makes it easier to read. So just have a play around with conditional formatting by yourself. There's also highlighting cells rules. So we can highlight a cell if they've scored greater than 5 tries. Just put 5 there. Boom. Easy. Alright lads, thanks for watching the video. I hope you are now able to use pivot tables to effectively analyze large amounts of raw data effectively like I have in this video. I have a lot of time on my hands right now to make videos on this channel, so comment down below what you guys would like me to do next. Make sure you subscribe to Excel Lads so you can keep track of my videos. Thanks again.